So
Right.
if I'm having this kind of day where it's not a question of not knowing what I need to know. Like we know what we need to do to be successful in sales. What
Yeah.
can we do to become someone that's actually changing these habits and as we become aware of it?
Right. Yeah. So the first step is master these internal triggers, or they will become your master. So the reason we procrastinate, it's not that something's broken about us. We're not defective somehow. It's simply an emotion regulation problem. What you need to realize is that time management is pain management. I'm going to say this again, super important. Time management is pain management. I would add to that weight management is pain management. Money management is pain management. And in fact, all human behavior, we used to think that human behavior was motivated by carrots and sticks, right? The pursuit of pleasure and the avoidance of pain. Not true. We know neurologically speaking, the brain only responds to one thing. The reason we do anything and everything is to escape discomfort. That in the brain is what gets us to act, right? Even the desire to feel good. You say, well, then why do I have incentives and bonuses? And don't people want to feel good? Of course they do. But the way the brain gets you to act, to go get that thing, is by creating a craving, a lusting, desire. All those emotions are themselves psychologically destabilizing. And once you realize that all human behavior is driven by a desire to escape discomfort and that time management is pain management, you can take a step back and say, wait. I said I was going to come into work early and make these sales calls. Why am I not doing that? And the reason is because you're looking to escape a feeling. There's some kind of sensation that you're not able to process in a helpful way, and you deal with it in a hurtful way. And so this is the difference between traction and distraction. If you ask people, what's the opposite of distraction? People say, oh, I don't want to be distracted, I want to be focused. But the opposite of distraction is not focus. The opposite of distraction is traction. I didn't think about this until I actually saw the origin of both these words. They come from the Latin root trahare, which means to pull. And you'll notice that traction and distraction end in the same 6 letters, A-C-T-I-O-N, that spells action, reminding us that distraction is not something that happens to us. It is an action that we take. So traction, by definition, is any action that pulls you towards what you said you were going to do, things that you do with intent, things that move you closer to your values and help you become the kind of person you want to become. Those are acts of traction. The opposite of traction, distraction, pulls you away from what you said you were going to do, further away from your values, further away from becoming the kind of person you want to become. So this is really important. This is more than just semantics, because I would argue that any action can be traction or distraction based on one word, and that one word is intent, right? If you plan to play video games or scroll social media or do whatever you want, right? Whatever's fun for you, if you plan to do that in advance, do it. Enjoy it. There's nothing wrong with it. You've made it into traction. But if it's not what you said you were going to do, it's instantly distraction. And the most harmful kind of distraction, especially when it comes to sales professionals, is when they think they are doing something productive, right? This used to happen to me all the time. I would sit down at my desk at work and I would say, okay, today I've got that big important project I need to work on. Nothing's going to get in my way. I'm not going to get distracted. Here I go. I'm going to get started. But first, let me check some email. Right? Let me just scroll that Slack channel real quick. Let me just do some of these other to-dos that are just easy to do. I'll get them off my to-do list to get some momentum going, right? And I didn't realize that that is the most dangerous form of distraction, is when distraction tricks you into prioritizing the urgent and the easy at the expense of the hard and important work you have to do to move your life and career forward. So just because it's a work-related task doesn't mean it's not a distraction. I would see this all the time. I used to sell solar energy. That was the first business I started. And with our salespeople, I would see, the unsuccessful salespeople were the people who had everything lined up. Okay, let me make sure I've read every brochure and I'm confident on how our product works. And I've gone over the sales script 1,000 times and I have my pencils ready and I have my gear. And they didn't just make the freaking calls, right? You gotta make the calls. You have to follow up. And so those are the people who weren't successful because they did all the stuff that was secondary, as opposed to, nope, I said from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m., I'm making my calls. That's what I gotta do. So being able to simply put in the hours without distraction is a key skill. I would argue it's the skill, because people talk about, okay, I want to perfect my sales presentation and my appearance or my whatever skill set. If you don't have the power to control your attention and time, you can't develop other skills. You can't put forth the effort to get better at anything unless you control your attention. So this, I think, is the fundamental skill of the century, especially for sales professionals, is be able to do what you say you're going to do with your time and attention.
I agree with you so much. And I think what happens in the sales profession, I think it's equally important as any other profession. The only problem is if you are compensated in results of your performance in sales, then you not mastering that ability will be painful financially and the feedback will be immediate. But we'll also find different things to blame, right? Because as you've mentioned, like it seems very productive if all I'm doing is, refining my sales presentation, making sure I'm better. And it's almost like as we talk about this, avoidance of pain is kind of what we're to manage. The process of selling itself, if you're having fears about doing sales and sales calls, like it usually comes with heavy baggage if you haven't practiced it before. And it seems like the way to soothe that pain is, well, if I'm better prepared, better certified, better qualified, better XYZ, then it will be less painful to make those calls. So then I'll be able to do them more effectively.
Yeah.
What have you noticed on how to balance that where it's like, hey, at some point you just need to do it?
Right. Well, I would say that for the most part, that's a myth. People think that the more training I get, the more I know, the better I'll feel. And that, I think, almost never happens. I think that's a myth. What changes, what happens to make you better able to deal with that discomfort is that you decide to see the discomfort differently. So this is called reimagining the trigger. I'll give you an example in my own life. So I'm a professional public speaker, okay? And one thing you don't want as a professional public speaker is to get stage fright. And I used to get stage fright all the time. In fact, I still get stage fright, right? So I would about to go on stage in front of 1,000 people, and I would have this shortening of breath. I'd feel that I have kind of this difficulty breathing, and I could feel my heartbeat, and my mouth would get dry, and my armpits would get sweaty. And I used to tell myself, you know what? If I was a real public speaker, I wouldn't feel this way. Right? How many salespeople tell themselves, oh, if I was good at this job, I wouldn't get nervous in front of the client, or I wouldn't have doubts, right? That's what I used to do to myself, which wasn't helpful because I had this narrative in my head that I was faking it, that I wasn't cut out for this, that I wasn't any good at it, that if I need to go study more and take another course so that someday I'll feel comfortable. BS. You never get comfortable. What you do is you reimagine the trigger. So what did I do? One day I was reading this research around how to reimagine a trigger. I spent a lot of time reading academic papers. And the technique it's called reframing. So what you want to do, what I did, was I started reframing how I saw that trigger. The trigger didn't change. I still got a shortness of breath. I could still feel my pulse. My armpits still got sweaty. But instead I started telling myself a different story. Not a narrative that this was a bad thing, but that discomfort was a good thing. And this is what you see with top performers in every life domain, whether it's sports, whether it's the arts, whether it's business. Top performers, they get the same internal triggers. They feel the same way everyone else does, but they use that discomfort as rocket fuel to propel them towards traction. Whereas what most people do, low performers, they escape it. They try and use it. Whenever they feel that discomfort, they try and escape it with distraction. So what did I do? What did I reframe? Instead of thinking, oh, this discomfort is a bad thing, I started telling myself, you know what's happening right now? The fact that my heart is beating faster, that means that my body is preparing me by pumping more oxygen to my brain so I can give the best possible presentation. I started seeing it as an asset. And so we can all do this. If you can step into the next presentation and say, you know what, I'm feeling nervous because I'm excited. This is important to me. I believe in my product. My customer is going to benefit. I'm doing them a favor by being here today, and I'm excited to present to them. You can reimagine that internal trigger as a thing that serves you rather than hurts you.
Oh, that's a powerful one. And, I want to make the confession, if I can join your camp on this also as a public speaker is, I still get nervous going on stage. But again, reframing is such a powerful tool. And I'll go a step further and say, as someone who does sales all the time, I have that little voice in my head sometimes that tells me, Jason, have you been doing as much sales as you used to? You've been training a lot, but you haven't been active on the phone. Maybe you need to get more training. And that voice that wants to, distract you, make you go do something else, except what you actually do, is there continuously, no matter how much I master the skill as I continue on the journey. It's always there. I just decide to make friends with it and trying to
Yeah.
understand it better. And quite frankly, your book is one of the more powerful ways that allowed me to become aware of all the different strategies that my mind plays on myself. And for those who haven't picked up a copy of Indestractable, I highly, highly, highly recommend it for you to gain some level of awareness and mastery over your time management.